Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today is the 7th of December 2020. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So before we get into the news from the weekend and on Friday, I wanted to give a quick kind of reminder to everyone that Gitcoin Grants Round 8 is still going. It actually goes till the 17th of December. So if you haven't donated yet, be sure to go on there and donate to all the projects that you want to support. It still does run for a while, but I always like to, get it out of the way. Don't leave it to the last minute sort of thing. I think there's up to $1 million of matching funds up for grabs. A bunch of projects have already been funded. There's a bunch of different categories here. You can see all the projects that are being funded, both from individual donors and also the matching. There's tons of different projects here, right? I'm sure you'll be able to find ones that you've used and you want to support. Not just like the projects themselves in terms of like the tech that you use, but also the media that you want to support. So there's a whole kind of category for that called community. The Daily Gwei falls into that. eth2, Bankless, The Defiant, DeFi Dad. There are so many now, right? Alex Saunders' monthly Ethereum recap that I do with him. So there's a ton in here. And as I mentioned last week, there's also grant collections that you can peruse through if you want to just have people that kind of like curate the grants for you. So, on this collections page here, I have the Sassel's Card of Love, which has 49 grants in it. You don't have to donate to all of them at once. You can just go in here and basically select which ones you want to donate to, and there's a bunch of other ones here. There's an eth2 one, so if you want to support basically all of the eth2 efforts, you literally just click here, click view, and then go into and donate, and add this to your cart and donate. So definitely go do that if you haven't yet. Quick shout out to Coin Center, who is absolutely dominating this Gitcoin grants round. They've received $160,000 worth of DAI in direct donations from people and 56,000 DAI in matching so far. So I think this is the highest matching / donation amount in Gitcoin's history for a single project. If I remember, the AIP 1559 got up there. I think it was around $100,000 maybe total, or a bit more than that. I think CoinCent has kind of, blown them out of the water here. This is over $200,000 worth. And I saw Niraj, who works at CoinCenter, on Twitter say that this basically makes up for the loss of their annual dinners. So they host an annual dinner, obviously once a year, whether it's basically a fundraising event for CoinCenter. They couldn't do it this year since, obviously because of coronavirus, and they're expecting that they won't be able to do it next year either. So this makes up for 2 years worth, which is pretty amazing because that's their biggest fundraising event. So really, really awesome to see. I'm sure that the Ethereum community showed the Coin Center a lot of love here. I'm sure they're going to show it back, right? They're going to lobby for us lobby on our behalf in the US, especially in regards to like Ethereum regulations and DeFi regulations and all that. We've seen a ton of this happening lately, like I talked about last week with the Stable Act. There's just so many, bad kind of bills and proposals going through or trying to get through that we need to educate these policymakers to make sure that they don't push these things through and they understand the technology itself. So definitely happy to see Coin Center get all of this. All right, last Gitcoin grants thing before I move on. There is a team that basically translates a lot of the content from Bankless and from the Daily Gwei into French. So for the Daily Gwei, they will translate every Tuesday and Thursday edition of the newsletter into French for their community. And they're doing this completely free. They're not being funded by anyone. They're doing it on a volunteer basis. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out here that if you appreciate the work that they're doing, go donate to their Gitcoin grant, of course. You don't even have to be French or understand or know how to read French to donate. It's just good to support these efforts because it basically lets us tap into different communities, right? Like crypto is very English, dominated, but we forget sometimes that there's whole communities out there that don't speak English, but they still want to tap into our ecosystem. So this is what the kind of community is doing here, or the volunteers are doing here in translating this content. So definitely go donate to them. I'd like to see their matching go up and their total donations go up as well. All right, on to some news from over the weekend. So a lot of you may not have heard of this project. So it's relatively new. It's called the Ethereum Push Notification Service, or EPNS for short. I'm going to put a disclosure here and say that I'm a small investor in this company. Basically, I got connected to them a few months ago. I was on a few calls with them. I've given them advice on how to approach things and how to basically go about doing their project and everything. So I just wanted to give a disclosure there that just to make sure that you're aware of that. But they're really, really awesome. The two co-founders are really great to work with. They're based out of India. They are really passionate about what they're building, and they want to build something useful. So what they're building with EPNS is basically a decentralized notification service for DeFi and Web3 and Ethereum. So, everyone's familiar with the usual notifications we get on our phones and our desktop, PCs and all that sort of stuff, our laptops. But have you ever kind of like thought to yourself, wow, I wish I could have notifications for the things I do on Ethereum? I certainly have. The only notifications I usually get is like MetaMask telling me that my transaction was successful, right? I don't get notifications like, hey, your position's underwater, make sure that you go top it up so you don't get liquidated. There are other services that do this, like DeFi Saver, for example, and I'm a big fan of DeFi Saver as well. But that's not a decentralized kind of protocol for notifications, and it's kind of like limited in scope. It's not open, whereas EPNS wants this to be kind of open, and they want people to be able to basically create their own notifications on this network, so that different people can interact with them. They also have an app now, basically an iOS app. If I click through here, if it wants to load, there we go. So they have an iOS app that you can kind of download here. Sorry, not iOS, Mac App Store. So for MacBook, that you can kind of download there. It's still very early stage project. It has a few pretty good notifications. Like, I don't know, they got here the ENS expiry alert. That's another big one, right? When you have an ENS address, they expire, right? You have to renew them, and if you don't, it goes up for grabs, and someone else can expire. Someone else can basically take your name from you. Like ETH gas price tracker as well, tracking the price of gas, and when it falls below 20 Gwei or something, getting notified of that so you can go do some cheap transactions and things like that. So really, really bullish on this project. Obviously, since I decided to invest in them and have been helping them, I really love projects that are doing something different and not just following the crowd. There's a lot of projects now kind of like trying to compete with existing projects, and that's all well and good. We need competition, but the most interesting things to me are these unique projects. So, kudos to the EPNS team for getting this kind of app out there, and I'm really excited to see how they go from here. All right, this was an interesting tweet from Philip here. So there was, last week as well with the Stable Act discussions, and we saw a couple of the key people that were involved in that act basically have a fundamental misunderstanding of Ethereum, Bitcoin, crypto networks in general, right? They thought that people running full nodes could filter transactions, they could, screen every transaction that comes through and basically, filter them out if they're quote unquote malicious or if they're doing, banking things or whatever, which, it was totally insane, right? I won't rehash the whole conversation, but basically, that got people thinking like, okay, if this bill was actually to go in, would it become illegal to run your own Ethereum full node, right? Would it be punishable? Would there be fines for it? Would there be jail time? All these sorts of things. I don't know if if it would go towards, jail time. That would be quite extreme. But, if an Ethereum full node becomes regulated as like a bank, basically, they're pretty bad regulations, right? So Philip's tweet here has basically said that even if every single ETH node in the US was forced to shut down, there would still be around 8,000 nodes in the world that would, still be online for the Ethereum network, which is really, really awesome, right? It means that we don't lose the majority of the nodes. There's over 11,000 nodes. I think it was 3,000, about 3,000 would go down if all the ones in the US went down, but we'd still have 8,000. So really great to see the distribution here and the resiliency of the network. You can see on the map here, if you're watching on the video, the nodes are basically concentrated in, obviously North America. Europe is a big part of it, and Southeast Asia as well. But you've also got Australia, where I am as well, seems to be doing quite well. So it is pretty evenly distributed. It's funny because you can see here on the map that South America and Africa is showing kind of like, not many nodes. I guess I can see in South America, actually, if I look closely, there are some nodes there, but it doesn't seem like there's many nodes in Africa and things like that. So I would like to see, more and more nodes get spun up there and it become more distributed there. But that might be for a number of reasons, of course, why that's not the case. But still, it's quite distributed already. And I actually went on today's Daily Gwei newsletter. I actually expanded on this and had a bunch of other thoughts in there on basically these statistics. So definitely go read that if you want to get more context around this. All right, next up, we have a really cool chart from Alexander Fisher, who has been a long-time Ethereum community member, and he's pretty big on ETH2. So he basically tweeted out this chart that shows ETH2 validators since Genesis. And we can see the participation rate increasing. So for those watching, you can see it increasing from, I think it was about 80, 85, 86% to basically almost 99%. Yeah, 99% now. So we're basically almost at 100% validator participation within ETH2, which is incredible. As I mentioned on last week, the test nets that we spun up for ETH2 suffered from low participation, and that's simply because there wasn't any real value at stake, right? Whereas if you're not participating in the network and you have ETH in the deposit contract and ETH that's supposed to be staking, that ETH will start kind of bleeding out, right? And you'll start losing ETH. And if you get down to 16 ETH for being offline, your validator will be kicked out, and that 16 ETH will actually be stuck until the merger or until like withdrawals are enabled on the beacon chain. So you've got like a pretty big motivation to be online. You want to be earning those rewards. I think the reward rate is about 17-18% at the moment. So you're missing out on some pretty chunky ETH rewards if you're offline. So there's only 1 to 2% of validators offline right now. I expect, those will probably come online with time as well. There's been a few different reports as to why these are offline still, but 99%, I mean, that's amazing. that's pretty incredible, I think. And he's also mentioned here that pending validators deposited and waiting for activation continues to ramp up and is now 8,600 plus with no exits so far. So no validators have been exited out of the pool. I think since this tweet was put out, maybe a day or so ago, there have been some exits due to slashing events. But yeah, this is cool. This is exactly what we want to see. I can't believe how well, after like a week, I can't believe how well ETH2 is still just chugging along after all the issues we saw with the test nets. It just really speaks to the fact that those test nets were critical and worked very well to get us to a point where the mainnet is just running smooth as butter. So I'm going to keep paying attention to this, of course, and keep tweeting about it and talking about it and probably writing about it in the newsletter. Because this I think is very important to keep an eye on, because if the network runs really, really, really well for 6 months, for example, the researchers and developers are going to feel extremely comfortable with introducing the next slot of features into ETH2. This was a big thing for them. They basically wanted to see a very stable, a very workable mainnet for a period of time, say 6 months, before they introduced any critical upgrades. So I think we're going to get that. I mean, it's only been a week, I probably cursed it by saying that, but the fact that it's gone so well so far is a very good sign. So looking forward to seeing if that continues to play out, which I think it will. All right, an interesting tweet from everyone's favorite Degen Spartan here. So he was basically, putting some tweets out about liquidity mining and what it's going to be like going forward. So he says 2020 was when liquidity mining and liquidity providing took off and you got paid to provide liquidity, right? 2021, this is his prediction. He thinks 2021 will be when liquidity migration will take off. So get paid to migrate your liquidity to layer 2s or other chains or other protocols. We've already kind of seen that with the Uniswap and SushiSwap stuff, right? When Uniswap's rewards ended, like their liquidity mining rewards, SushiSwap said, hey, guys, you can come here with your same liquidity and provide on here and we'll give you sushi rewards. Excuse me. So we already saw that happening, right? Now, will this happen for other chains? I'm surprised other chains aren't really doing this yet in a big way. This is a really easy way to get liquidity on these other chains, right? And like other protocols as well. And then layer 2s as well, right? We've actually seen layer 2s do liquidity mining recently. Diversify announced some liquidity mining. Loopring's been doing it for their layer 2 exchanges. I actually, if I was to kind of like maybe make a prediction here that I don't believe in too strongly, but just something I thought of then. Will Uniswap have a liquidity mining program for Uniswap v3, right? If they have a layer 2 solution, or if they have another thing that they want people to migrate for really quickly, will they introduce that? Who knows, But this was, it just got my brain spinning when I saw this tweet from Degen Spartan here. I think he put out a few more tweets here. So yeah, he basically says, imagine using the liquidity migration tool provided by the Vampiric protocol that would help to migrate over your liquidity. In exchange, you get X amount of rewards, but your liquidity and or rewards are also locked for Y period. So this is basically like vesting these rewards as well. I can see here Kurt had the same idea as me with Loopring is already doing this. With liquidity mining migration and trying to basically encourage people to go to layer 2s and things like that. So I think we're going to see more of this. I think it's actually going to happen in 2021, especially if the market keeps heating up. There's going to be more and more, a demand for this. Liquidity mining really works in a big way once there's a lot of demand for like the tokens, right? So the token price goes up, so the APYs go up, and you kind of have this flywheel and this kind of like snowball effect. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out in 2021. Really funny tweet from Andre. He put this out a couple of hours ago. So he basically said there's 4 new releases under kind of like the YON ecosystem that are currently under audit. From Pickle, from Cream, from Cover, and then the 4th one he didn't give away. Obviously that's a surprise. And he goes on to say, waiting for the feedback loop is painful. It feels like wasted time. You can't start on new work and you can't release yet. Very annoying limbo state. This was funny because Andre is famous for I test in prod, right? He has it in his bio still. Basically deploying new products and contracts to production on Ethereum mainnet without audits, without anything like that, without doing it on test nets and letting people play with it. So I thought this was funny that he was complaining about that because now he's basically forced into this developer life cycle where he has to wait, and he's obviously someone who doesn't like to wait. He puts out a lot of different protocols and a lot of different smart contracts, and the fact that he's forced to wait slows him down, and he hates that. So I just thought that was a little bit funny, but I think it's for the best. This is better than testing in production and there being bugs or people losing money and things like that. I see that Deep Blue Crypto said the same thing. Yeah, better than testing in production and losing user funds and things like that. But I think I mean, even though he's frustrated with it, I think this is a better path forward for not only YON but also showing the wider ecosystem that this I test in prod stuff is just not long-term sustainable. It is not something that we should be aiming for. We should be aiming to do better than that. We should definitely be auditing and testing and everything on test nets before we have deployed a mainnet, or else we're just going to end up with users losing funds all the time, and DeFi is just going to keep getting like a bad name because of that. So I'm very glad that Andre kind of like is sticking to this now, and I'm looking forward to these updates that are coming out as part of the YON ecosystem, right? And you'll feel safe because they've been kind of audited and then they've been looked at, and it's not just like let's put it out there and see what happens sort of thing. So looking forward to seeing what happens there. All right, Vitalik tweeted out that 1% of all ETH is now in the deposit contract, which is quite insane, right? I think it's a 1.15 million ETH, which is insane. I remember we were struggling to. I mean, people thought we were going to struggle to get 524,288 ETH, the minimum, and now we're like pretty much double that. So yeah, Vitalik tweeted out about this with a bunch of charts that he's been tweeting out, basically around when the deposits came in, on what weekday did they came in, how many entities how many depositors needed to collude to reach 34%. To kind of like have the majority share on the network, basically. At the moment, I think it's 10. To reach 51% is 30 to 67%, which he notes here, an attack can do great damage, is 106. So ideally, we want all of these as high as possible, right? But at the same time, if the 10 depositors say, okay, we're gonna do something, we're gonna get 34% of the network and then try to like censor transactions and things like that. I mean, it's not too much of a big deal on the Beacon chain in its current state, but in the future, if they tried to do this, they would be slashed for this behavior, right? And that's a lot of ETH. 34% of the 1.1 million ETH. Oh, well, yeah, 34%, of the 1.1 million ETH. It's like, what, over 300,000 ETH would be burned, right? And that's all their money gone. So that's the beauty of proof of stake, is it's kind of like, when you try to attack the network, we're just gonna like burn all your ETH. So that's good. It's a good deterrent, and I don't think we're gonna see people colluding like this, but we definitely want that number up from 10. Like 10 is, I mean, you can create a group chat with 10 people and just like collude and do whatever you want, basically. But I don't think that would happen. These people aren't really known from what I know. But yeah, I think, I mean, as Vitalik notes here, he says that the decentralization numbers are a bit worse than last time, because only because they now properly treat Bitcoin Suisse with their multiple addresses as a single unit. Okay, so Bitcoin Suisse is another one there. That's a service provider, right? A staking provider. But I'm pretty sure they're staking like custom funds as well. So another deterrent not to attack the network or do anything funky and get yourself slashed as well. There's much of other charts here from Vitalik as well, just updates on basically the participation count over time, ETH deposited over time, and things like that. It's actually, I mean, if you look at the ETH deposited over time chart, it's funny because you can see that big spike, that first big spike when it was basically a day or two before the minimum needed to be reached, and then we saw a lot go in. But since then, we've actually kept seeing like a ton go in, right? We've basically doubled the amount of ETH in there. So not as fast, of course. Like it took another, I think, 2 weeks from the look of just eyeing this chart, but still really good to see. Who knows where we finish up, right? Are we going to get to 2 million ETH by next year, by January? Maybe. I think it's going to slow down from here, to be honest. Unless there's like some more exchanges that go online and a lot of people just flood into ETH staking because of that. But it's pretty incredible that 1% of all ETH is now actually locked, right, for quite a while, a year at least. So pretty cool to see that. And I'm glad Vitalik has been tweeting about this sort of stuff and sending this signal out to the ecosystem. All right, an interesting tweet thread from Peter Pan here, who's involved with Metacartel, Venture DAO, and 1KX Network. He is pretty big in the DAO and community building space. He's been around the block, so to speak. And this tweet thread basically goes through a tutorial island for DAOs. So how you take the community builder path and, it basically how to get involved and contribute to DAOs when you are fairly new to crypto and just want to learn. This is really important because there's a lot of people that come into crypto, say you're brand new, you come into Ethereum, you want to join a community, you join, and there's all this lingo you have to learn, right? You don't know how to contribute because it's very hard to know how to contribute. You don't know, if you should join a call. You don't know if you should join the forum. You don't know if your opinions are going to be, you don't know if you're going to be called stupid, for lack of a better word, right? For your opinions because you're a newer person. So he basically says this is how you can get involved and learn really quickly. Step 1, take notes of the DAO's regular community calls. Publish and summarize those meeting notes alongside other project and community issues items into a weekly newsletter. Help core contributors run surveys to gauge community sentiment and feedback on new draft DAO proposals. There's a bunch of others here. Work on community documentation. Help other new community members on board. Help coordinate the DAO's meetings. All this sort of stuff. So there's a lot of basic stuff that people can do when they first join a community that is very kind of like, I wouldn't call it maybe low effort, but like, lower effort than say, building something as a developer, for example, right? And it has high reward and it doesn't take a lot of specialized knowledge to do, right? Taking notes of a community call doesn't require specialized knowledge, and that just gets your foot in the door. And then from there, you start building up a reputation within these communities and these DAOs, and you can start doing more. You might get access to DMing people in DMing community members in that community, and being able to talk to them one-on-one for long periods of time because they know that you're a community member that's going to stay, and you're not just in there for like, pumping the token or whatever, which I've seen in other communities. There's been people that come, they say all this stuff, and then in reality, what they're trying to do is they're just trying to make, pump their tokens or whatever. And serious communities don't appreciate that. So if you show your worth and you show that you're going to stick around, then you get like this reputation, you get this credibility, and you get access to basically being able to talk to all different people, and people respect you a lot more. This happens in every single community. If you look at the Ethereum community, for example, and all the people within that community, they've been around for years. They've had to earn their reputations. They have to earn their credibility through just hard work, through grinding, and they had to earn the trust of the wider community. And once that is earned, it becomes a lot easier to do different things. But it's an uphill battle to get there. And the bigger community that you join, the harder it is, right? Because there's like an established, it's not a formal hierarchy, but it's like an established hierarchy where, you're starting from the bottom and then you have to work your way up to the top. And it just becomes exponentially harder the more community members there are. So if you want to get involved on, as a community member in somewhere where it's like much easier to get to maybe the top and become like a core contributor, it's probably better to join a newer community. One that doesn't have many community members yet, one that you can kind of like make noise in without having to be drowned out by everyone else. So I think, there's plenty of these communities spinning up all the time because there's plenty of new projects spinning up all the time. So that's what I would do. If I was completely new at this point in time, I would try my hardest to find a community that I kind of resonate with and make sure that I insert myself in there and that my work is valued and I build trust in that community. That's exactly what I did with Ethereum, but I did this back in I guess when I started kind of being really heavily involved was early 2018. And that's after a year of basically learning about Ethereum in 2017. But that was during a bear market, right? That was when the Ethereum community was much, much smaller. And it was kind of like a lot of, like from my personal experience, a lot of grinding to get where I kind of am today. And a lot of like basically luck too. So that's kind of what it is. This isn't kind of new, I guess. Like this is basically everything. Like if you're working for a company, for example, and you just joined the company and you just started your career, you're going to start as like, for lack of a better term, you're going to start at the bottom and then you got to work your way up through the company or through your career. It goes for everything, right? Same with like video games. If you start a video game for the first time, say you're starting an online game, you start at level 1, you have to work your way up, right? You can try and cheat and get people to like power level you or whatever. And that might work in video games, but it doesn't work in real life. Maybe, if someone's friends with you and they say, hey, this is my friend, show them the ropes and basically, help onboard them. There'll be a bit more trust and credibility there, but you've still got to earn most of it yourself. So yeah, I'll link this thread in the show notes and you can go read it yourself as well. And maybe even like DM Peter if you're interested in this sort of stuff. He's helped a lot of people in communities over the kind of years, and I personally greatly respect him for all that he's done within the DAO community space. He's definitely a pioneer there. So yeah, definitely reach out to him. All right, last thing I wanted to talk about was this, I guess, article from CoinDesk where it's titled "Why Ethereum and Bitcoin Are Very Different Investments." And one of the lead quotes here are, for institutional investors, they are buying BTC for the digital gold narrative. Meanwhile, ETH just isn't in that conversation yet. And this is from Ryan Watkins from Messari, who I spoke about last week. They did a really awesome ETH2 report at Messari. And yeah, that was a quote from him. And you know what? I agree with him, right? If we look at the macro narrative of what kind of investors are buying and what they're interested in, of course it's Bitcoin, because they don't understand anything past that. Like the digital gold narrative, if you believe it, is so easy to understand. Regardless of whether you believe it or not, it's still easy to understand. It's something that's familiar to people outside the ecosystem. But Ethereum is much harder to understand, right? Ethereum doesn't have a solid narrative like digital gold that's very simple and maps to something. If you call Ethereum digital oil, right? Yes, it maps to something, but it doesn't really, resonate, right? It doesn't show the value of it, and things like that, as well as digital gold does. What I do think Ethereum is a good narrative for Ethereum is Ethereum an internet native bond, right? With ETH2 staking. Bankless first wrote about this. You can go check that out if you just Google ETH the internet bond and Bankless, and it'll come up with it. But basically, I think that resonates with people, right? Because a lot of traditional investors know what bonds are, how they work, right? And if you tell them, well, ETH is an internet native bond, you can buy ETH, you can stake it and earn ETH on that, right? Earn ETH from the Ethereum digital nation. That is really going to resonate, I think. But also at the same time, it's going to take time to build out that narrative, right? A lot of people aren't going to be interested in staking while it's like locked, for example. Like even your rewards are locked during this kind of phase 0 of ETH2. So it's going to take time to get there. But I also think from a kind of narrative perspective and from an information asymmetry perspective, this is really great, right? You don't want to, I mean, if you were buying like Bitcoin or ETH now, and this is an investment advice, like I believe ETH has further upside here. It has a much smaller market cap, right? It doesn't have, it's not as financialized as an asset as Bitcoin is. So I think that it has further upside. And when investors finally do get what Ethereum and ETH are and how it works and where the value is, right? A lot of the alpha is going to be kind of like sucked out of the room because you've had all these buyers coming in, you've had all this stuff happening, from early on. So that's why I think that it's important to pay attention to these things. I'm personally looking forward to the day that Ethereum is spoken about in the mainstream like Bitcoin is, and people actually understand it. They aren't just talking about the price. They're talking about what you can do. They're talking about DeFi, right? Talking about DAOs, talking about everything, really everything on Ethereum that's super exciting. I think we'll get there, but it's going to take a lot more time. Bitcoin's also been around for 6 more years than Ethereum has. It has also, it's the number one asset by market cap, so that's what everyone focuses on. It has a much better brand awareness, but that's fine. I think Ethereum over the next few years is going to reach parity with Bitcoin in that regard, because once I've said this before, but once basically you're in crypto, it's no longer about Bitcoin, it's about Ethereum, right? Ethereum is where all the crypto native stuff is happening. Like anything you want to do that's interesting, or anything you want to follow that's interesting in crypto, 99% of it's happening on Ethereum. And that's where these investors are going to flock to, or these people are going to flock to after they're bored with Bitcoin, right? They're like, okay, I bought Bitcoin. That's cool. I've heard of this Ethereum thing. What's that all about? Oh, they have, there's a token called Ether. What's that all about? What does that do? And that's where all of this kind of narrative building and all of this content that we're putting out around ETH and Ethereum comes into play, right? And then convinces these people that Ethereum is just as important, if not more important, than Bitcoin. And not just the asset, but the network itself. So I'm looking forward to that happening. But I'll link this article. You can go read it for yourself. I think it's interesting to get perspectives that aren't just like ultra bullish, Ethereum's going to take over the world kind of perspectives. You definitely want to keep an open mind here, and you want to be aware of the fact that Ethereum is a much younger system than something like Bitcoin, and it's going to take more time for Ethereum to get that mind share, basically. All right, that's it for this episode, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give the video a like if you liked it. Subscribe to the Daily Gwei newsletter and join the Discord channel. And I'll see you all tomorrow.